Hey, this is Trekland HQ, and we are live today. My guests, John and MaryJo Tenuto, the authors of Star Trek 3, The Making of, from Titan Books. Yes, today live. Get your questions ready here on Trekland Tuesdays Live, number 1417. With Dr. Trek, Larry Nemeczek, coming at you here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47. And yes, Trekland Treks. Boy, I'm starting to have a lot of people starting to call. We're getting into late summer and fall, and it's still perfect time here in Southern California to arrange, maybe the away team mission of a lifetime for you personally, going to actual Star Trek location sites. It's fun. It's amazing. I'll handle it all. We'll work on it ahead of time. Just reach out. We'll pick a day that works for you when you're here in SoCal on your vacation or even business and you have a free day. Go to 4 sites and a quick fast food lunch. More info than you'd ever want to know and more photo ops. I help you wrangle and I handle it all after we plan it. Okay, just check it out. Widget, LarryNemeczek.com or TreklandTreks.com. Yes. It's another great Tuesday here in Trekland, and I'm excited because I have a guest day today. So just a little housekeeping. Welcome, everybody. It would be helpful if I was, watching the chat here. That might be nice. There we go. So what am I doing here? Nope. Boom. Now we are. And everybody's popping in. Good to see everybody coming in. I do this time every day. Every Tuesday, we're here at this time of day so that we can have a global audience in. So, yes, if you are new to Trekland Tuesdays Live, jump in there. We got an awesome community. The TTLers are here. They're around the world, too. We got lots of Europeans. We've even had folks from Africa at times, Australia, on up to Japan. It's great for this. Just to know, if you are on Facebook, you're only going to see the Facebook comments. So that's why I always encourage people to come over to, Twitch, maybe, all 3 of you. But really, YouTube is where you want to jump in. You can see all the other comments in the chat. And also, I am now super chatted. So I don't do, much monetizing here for Tuesdays Live. But if you do feel the need and the desire to throw a little silver in the pot there and super chat your question, it'll always get our attention faster and just helps out with everything. I appreciate everybody who helps us with our patrons and everybody who helps us with Tuesdays Live. And you know what? If you're watching later on YouTube, that's cool. Leave a comment below. You can still keep the conversation going. Just to know that maybe some Tuesday when you've got it working, and I know it's during the workday here in the Americas, but if you're ever where you can at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, or yes, 8 UK time, 9 UK time, and 10 Central Europe. Maybe you can join us live as well. It'd be great to have you on. As it is, today's a guest day format, so we're going to jump right in and talk to our guests. And if you want to chat away, you can throw questions in the chat for them, for me, for them. I will, when we get to a break, I will back scroll and we'll go back and look at things if we happen to catch it. So if we happen to miss it. So I know I said today was a guest day. I think I got everything there. Yes. So again, welcome, everybody. While you're waiting to get a chat question in, if you are new to Trekland Tuesdays Live, and the community here, TTLers, introduce yourself. Let us know where you're coming in from. How's the weather? How's the trek where you are? And all of that. And if you're a longtime lurker, you can still lurk. You can pop up whenever you feel like it. It's great. Okay. But yeah. I'm so excited to have the Tenutos today. We've had them on before. They've done the Star Trek 2 book. And looky here, it's a mini. I know I got my box open already, but look, I've seen the movie and I've talked about it a little bit over the years. So I'm not too worried about it because I wanted to save the splashy opening here. Yay. John and MaryJo Tenutos. You all have seen them before. I thought I would just share a little bit of a thrill here and do a book opening. Do an opening live for what it is. Somebody's like, no, don't ruin the paper. Don't. Those scissors are sharp. These are my mom's scissors that I've rescued over the years, and they're still just as sharp as they were in the olden decades. Okay. Shrink wrap. hopefully, if you get one, it will be as well defended and protected as this. There we go. All right. Awesome print job. It's another one of these Titan series books. It's up. This came out on the 2nd, so it's already out. I mean, why am I talking? Let's get the Tenutos in here and let them talk about it. Okay. Yeah. Where are we? Boom. There we go. John, MaryJo, thanks for joining us today.
Thank
Hi,
you. Hello. Hey, Larry.
Hey, and great. Let's see. Why? Hold on. Let's get us.
No, show the book. Forget us.
There we go. I couldn't figure out why it looked like you weren't popping up with me. Yeah. There we go. So congratulations, number one.
Thank you.
Again. And it looks like you must be doing something right. Titan had you back.
Always nice to be invited back.
Yeah. Well, so Star Trek II, the book there went really well. Of course, I should say you guys are retired educators, researchers. You're there in now. Where are you? Are you still in the outer greater Chicago area?
We moved actually since we talked to you last time, since we were on, we moved to Iowa. So to a little town called Altoona, Iowa. And we're about 2 hours from the most important location in Iowa, which is, of course, Riverside, Iowa, where Captain Kirk is born. So that's the only reason we moved here, so we could legitimately say, no, I'm from Iowa, I only work in outer space.
See, I was going to say the most important place in Iowa for Star Trek is it Ames or Iowa City, where Nick Meyer's archives are?
Iowa City. Yeah,
that's right. I thought it was University of Iowa.
Yeah, right at the university there, and beautiful. Not only beautiful campus, but a beautiful collection of all of his materials. If anybody's ever around that area, it's definitely worth spending a day just going through the archives there of everything. Just one of my favorite things he ever did was the Night That Panicked America. He wrote that, which was about Orson Welles and the War of the World.
Dramatized it.
Yeah, dramatized. Was on TV in the 1970s. Had John Ritter in it. All these sort of famous TV stars of the 70s, and just a wealth of information about all his different projects there. So obviously also Star Trek.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Nick Meyer, he had nothing to do with Star Trek 3 after turning it down because he wanted to go on.
That was one of the surprising things we found out, was that he had tangentially. Yeah, you're absolutely right. His line was, I don't know how to do Resurrection. So he said no to Star Trek 3 and was off doing, he was off working on other projects, but he did have two things to do with it. One was helping Leonard navigate the kind of directing negotiations. There was a little bit of hesitation, a lot of enthusiasm for the idea, but also some concerns and hesitations about, first time that he would be directing a major movie.
Rookie director doing it, right?
Yeah, and Gene Roddenberry raising some objections like, you can't fire him. You're hiring a director you can't fire, which sometimes you have to do, not necessarily because a director isn't talented, but because of other things. Sometimes the vision isn't working out or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And so Nick helped Leonard with the negotiations, in the sense that Leonard would come to him and talk, and Leonard would get advice from Nick Meyer. And one of the best pieces of advice I think he got was when Nick asked him, are you willing to walk away from this? Would you be willing to walk away from the movie, from directing? And Leonard said yes, because he really wanted to be involved on that level. And then Nick said, well, then don't worry, you'll get it. If you're willing to walk away, you're going to get it. So, and then he did give script notes. We talked about that a little bit in the book. Yeah, he gave script notes on the first outline that was done in September of '82, and gave some really good notes on it. So he was involved in that way, friendly, as a friendship, not any official role. Yeah.
Right. Well, the guy had written the first movie from the scraps, pulled it together in an emergency, and didn't take any money or credit for it for 30 or 40 years. So or whatever. Credit, not money, I guess. Gave his agent a heart attack. He did that. So that's cool, because we've done some, we've tried to pull some random papers out on the Trek Files and talk to people relevant, to the Star Trek 3 experience. So so that brings up, so you're talking about that story. That's something I guess you recount in the book.
Yep, definitely. That's part of that. Yeah, one of the things we wanted to do with this one, each of the books has a little bit of a different focus on it, and one of the things we wanted to focus on here were the scripts, the early scripts. So we were able to get our hands on every version of every script and every outline, and so we summarize that within the book. So the sort of first 2 chapters are how they kind of got the ball rolling, and Leonard coming in as director, but also a lot of discussion of what the stories could have been or would have been.
Yeah. Well, this is all going to make a point that I wanted to make, which is you call this a coffee table book at your peril. I don't know who's doing that, but there's tons of photos. A lot of them are ones we've seen, and a lot of them are rarer. We can talk about that. But my point was going to be, there's lots of text in here. So don't think it's just the pretty pictures, although we love pretty pictures and we love rare pictures. But like just what you mentioned there about Nick giving script notes to helping his friend Leonard out, and encouraging, since he gave up the throne himself, he was happy to see Leonard take it on. And I think by that time he got it, that Leonard was a very thoughtful, director. He was ready to make that leap and needed a little bit of coaching, but was probably there. So we've got a dual tangent here talking about the book is Star Trek 3 itself, and then your process writing it. Did you talked about one thing you wanted to do differently with this one was get all the iterations. And I have somewhere that we bought from a dealer back in the day, an outline for 3 where it was still Romulans, and it makes sense to call the ship Bird of Prey and all that. And it was a con in St. Louis, was one of the first times I went out of state to a con when I was in my 20s. And I remember having Harv, being in line, and Harv Bennett didn't know me from Adam, and he's signing this lime green cover to the thing. And he looked at it and he goes, wasn't like accusatory because it wasn't his department, but he's like, where did you get this? And he signed it, but I love it because it was the first, like in the 80s, it was like, oh, look, that's why the Klingon ship is called a Bird of Prey, because they marked out Romulan, wrote in Klingon, but nobody marked out Bird of Prey and wrote something else. I mean, did you all get into that? Because you've got the visual effects component of Star Trek 3 in here as well, as because Star Trek 3 is such a, I'm going to shut up in a minute, but Star Trek 3 is such a pioneer visual effects wise, ships, the tech, especially the ships, like things that they used for 4,700 years on all the later shows and movies were all built for 3, right? I mean, it's got a fascinating history there on that end alone.
I was going to say, speaking of pioneer, one of the really rare things that happened on this film is that ILM was involved right at the beginning. And when we were talking to people like Kirk Thatcher and Ken Ralston, they were saying how rare that is and how it's a shame that more movies don't do that. They don't have that kind of innovation and vision like Leonard Nimoy had, but they were brought in right away. And so ILM had had a lot of input then on the look of the film, on the ships, and how Leonard Nimoy they would create like a model, and he'd look at it and hold it and then say, well, can we do this, can we do that? And they were able to do that. And so by the end of that meeting, the end of that day, they knew exactly what it's going to look like and all that.
Yeah, and them being, what Mary Jo said, is very important, I think, because they were brought in so early that they didn't just have an effect on the special effects; they had an effect on the story. So they were, that whole sequence of stealing the Enterprise from the inside of the space station was an idea by David Carson from ILM, who was the ILM art director, who went to an airport and kind of had the idea there, because the script originally called for the theft to occur while it was in the same dry dock it was in Motion Picture and Wrath of Khan. So there wasn't that added element of the doors closing or having to navigate around that obstacle. And they really did, the Cruge's dog, which becomes a character, is something important for Cruge's character, was Ken Ralston's idea. That wasn't something that Harv had scripted. In fact, very little with the dog was scripted. Ken had told us that, when they were doing rehearsals, Christopher Lloyd picks up the dog secondary puppet, the puppet that's just there for lighting. Right. It's the cheap, quick.
It's a stand-in.
And it's sitting there, and he picks that up and cradles it after the ship is attacked. Was not scripted, was not part of Leonard's direction. It was something Christopher Lloyd did, and Leonard loved it and thought that it added a lot to that scene. So now the ILM guys are going, oh my God, we got to make something quick that looks like, how do we take this stunt puppet that's not, can't stand the scrutiny of the light of day? How can we make it look like he could? So, there was a lot of contributions that they made to that story, and really opened up that film. As you know, and I know you've talked about this on previous shows, it was a soundstage production. It was only 2 days. Yeah, only 2 days were doing at Occidental College, where they filmed the sort of departure from the bird of prey.
Yeah. The very bottom of the Mount Salea steps.
That's it. Yeah, and everything else was shot on sound stages. And it was really ILM that helped through their MAT department to open that film up and give it a scope so that it didn't look like a television show. It looked like a film, and it was so very, very important. ILM's contributions to that film.
And I know that the turnover at Paramount had happened since, but I got to think that the memories of the motion picture debacle were really in mind, partly. And now that we're on this path, and I'm thinking that now, obviously, they used ILM for the Wrath of Khan, but the world of visual effects and sci-fi was so rapidly evolving. And ILM was kind of the gold standard, but they were also, it was still a rare bird. I mean, they were like, I don't want to say they were the only standard because there were other competing effects houses out there, but it made sense to, talking about sitting down and going, being there in the beginning and probably helping storyboard. And Leonard's a first-time director, so he's feeling the need. I mean, good on him for having them in early and making the decision. But I'm just thinking everybody is still thinking about the debacle from the Robert Abel mess on the first movie. But for all those reasons, what I was getting at with the ships is this is the movie where the Excelsior debuts, where the Bird of Prey debuts, where the Space Dock debuts. It just seems like even the little merchantman ship got reused a million times in Next Generation when we still have, every once in a while I have to stop and go, wow, like Star Trek 3 was just, if you're a ship pornista, if you're a tech head and you love the ships of Star Trek, it's like Star Trek 3 was like a gold mine, for a lot of things that got used forever and ever and ever and well into the next, decade and the next century, I guess. But
Roger Ebert commented, which is just shocking in a way. The famous film critic, for those who might not know who he was, but Roger Ebert was one of the giants of film criticism. And he talked about how beautiful the Bird of Prey was in his review, which is just, because it was, and it was a wonderful ship, beautifully designed, beautiful color. I think that he does make a little offhanded mention in his review about, but why does it have wings that why would it have wings if it's in space? And I guess Leonard and Harv responded back to him and said, well, it can fly in the atmosphere too. And he's like, oh, okay. So, I mean, it was that ship captured the imagination, I think, of even people who weren't necessarily ship or tech minded, right? Because it was such an unusual, beautiful design. Yeah. One of the things that we're proud of in the book is we have a lot of pictures of, the rough models, the early models of what they were toying with for things like the Excelsior and so on in there.
Yes. Yeah. And well, you've got, oh, look, is this a call sheet for ILM? Oh, wow. Okay. Very nice. No, you've got so much in here. And again, I think were you able, I'm looking at this and I know we talk about maybe something I remember being published in 1984 that people haven't seen in 20 years. But was there really a cool surprise? Did you make any discoveries digging back through archives of any kind?
Yeah, lots. Part of that came from the archives. Even things like Dan Madsen's very early fan club, magazine, because Dan was at that time he was official. It wasn't the communicator when you were,
Right.
handling the editing of it.
The official Star Trek fan club magazine.
Yeah. So there was a lot of great resources there. Of course, Starlog, things like that. But we were fortunate with this one. We did 18 new interviews for the book, and got to talk to people from both in front of and behind the scenes. So they always had stories that surprised us. Talking about the ears.
Yeah. Well, with Vaj, he didn't know that he was on one of the glasses until he saw the actual Taco Bell commercial.
Oh, really?
Yes. And they had a mix up with the ears between him and the ears for Stephen Manley. And then with the fire taking place, that gave them time to go and find the correct ears.
No, now talk about the fire.
Yes.
Yeah, the fire is a chapter in there. We got to talk with William Shatner a bit about that, and just a tragedy of film and television history. It was a massive fire, cost about $3 million worth of damage. It destroyed many different locations because it burned. It actually the embers wound up affecting other parts of the studio, including the cemetery, where some of the famous the 1930s and 40s Hollywood.
Not Paramount, but immediately behind Paramount.
Right, behind Paramount, right. So the main location that I think people would be familiar with that was completely lost was what they called New York Street, which was where, Laverne and Shirley do their Shamil, Shamazel, Hasenpep Incorporated.
The old New York Street, we should say.
New York Street.
The original New York, yeah.
I think that was in The Godfather. I mean, it was in so many different pieces. And unfortunately, that fire was deliberately set. They did not catch who did it as far as we were able to determine research. But they did come out and say that it was deliberately set. They know that it was set behind the sort of facade of what was called the tattoo shop location. And then it wound up burning through a great deal of the studio. And it did threaten the Star Trek sets. In fact, it did touch the Star Trek sets. The Star Trek set the exterior did start on fire. There were holes. You could see through the holes to the, outside because it burned through the exterior wall. And of course, very dangerous on the Star Trek set because they had the Genesis set there, and it was all made of flammable material.
Right.
So William Shatner was one of the people who helped to save the day. And as Bill told us, not just save the day, he wanted to save the day, meaning he was very concerned. He had to get back for T.J. Hooker, which is why he did not even entertain the concept of directing the Star Trek at that point. And so he was literally done filming, and then the next day was due on the T.J. Hooker set. So there couldn't be delays for him. So he wanted to save the day, meaning save the day heroically, but really he was interested in saving the filming day.
Right. Right.
And so while they were doing that, while Bill was helping the firefighters, they were still shooting. Leonard was filming with Nichelle because he was very conscious of not getting behind schedule, showing that as a director, he was responsible with budget and time. But our favorite story about the fire is Charles Carell, who was the director of photography. He really wanted to film this in Hawaii. He had seen King Kong Lives, I think is the name of it. It's a sequel to King Kong where he gets married to another Kong. It's very weird. But anyway, but it was a weird film, but it was beautifully filmed, and it was filmed in Hawaii, and he had seen the dailies of it, and he really wanted to film in Hawaii. But he knew that was really not possible because they needed a very controlled set. They were doing stunt work. They needed a cactus that had snow on it. I mean, it was just not something you could do. But he said after he heard about the fire, he secretly was like, good, now maybe we'll get to go to Hawaii because maybe the sets had burned down. So but yeah, it was quite an amazing event that occurred when they were filming.
I was going to say, Charles Correll, doesn't he know what the post-motion picture Paramount accountants and budgeters are going to? It's like, yeah, right. Why? No, I mean, my memory just offhand was it was noticed early in the morning, and Shatner was there, like at 5, 6, 7 a.m. in the morning, and just nobody had noticed it yet, and he grabbed a hose, and it really wasn't auditioning for the PR. I remember Entertainment Tonight and all the media made a big deal about Captain Kirk comes in and saves the day. But it really wasn't. It's almost like you'd think, oh, come on, they staged this. Somebody lit a match somewhere so Shatner could come in and grab a fire. It's like, no, he was really just happened to be there and happened to, before it got a little water on it before it got, before anybody else could get there. Because they have
and the firefighters actually, while they were appreciative, as firefighters often are, they know the hidden dangers of things. And, you'll whether it's gas in your house or whatever it happens to be, and they'll tell you, don't do this, don't. And they were telling people, do not go in that building, because if that roof collapses, that fire, if those embers get in there, the stuff that's made out of, it's going to be an inferno in seconds.
And not knowing the inventory of what was in the, what gases, what tanks, what materials, like you said, fiberglass, whatever might be noxious. Just, you think you're on top of it, but even just in there breathing even worse than whatever normal smoke is. Yeah. You started saying, MaryJo.
No, I was going to say the same thing about the volatility of the chemicals.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's all kinds of wacky special effects, gases and nitrous oxide or whatever could be in there. And then you've got exploding tanks, and then you've got, anyway, but I just remember coming across in the middle of the country, stuck far away from LA, and reading either the AP story or hearing the Entertainment Tonight, story about that. I'm like, oh, come on, really? But realizing but after that fire, that's where they went in and rebuilt New York Street to the street that we have now that has the sites from some of the DS9 and TNG shows. And I think that was when they rejiggered the middle of the lot and got rid of somebody decided it was time to get rid of the Western town, that Westerns were past going and all of that. But anyway, what else, photo wise, you may have come into some surprises. What texture, anything else that you got into your research and said, oh my God, who knew this? Or it was said in 1984 and history has buried it until now?
Well, I really love seeing Robert Fletcher's designs. So his collection is at Harvard, and some of these aliens you see for such a short time on the screen, or you only see them seated. So you see them from the waist up. And it was just nice to see he designed full head to toe look. The bar alien who speaks kind of like Yoda, the backwards speak. He had little shoes, and it's like, we don't see them. So I love being able to include photos like that where you can see the full look. And that's always a hard thing to do, is because, you're limited with the page number and with the words. There's so much that we'd love to include, and that includes Robert Fletcher's designs.
Yeah. And then for me, and we're kind of riffing off of the Fletcher designs, it was any deleted scenes. We had made, we get whatever photos ILM has, because ILM very generously gives a lot of photos for the book. And we're very appreciative of that. And also Paramount, of course, CBS provides us with all the pictures that they have within their archives. There were some that we specifically requested. One was we wanted the pictures of the orangutan on set. That was a big deal. So we wanted to get those photos, and we got those. So they were very happy about that. We also really wanted
whoa, orangutan on set.
It's towards the back of the book.
It's in the book. It's it's
a special visitor.
Yeah, special visitor. And we talked to William Shatner about it. It was one of the most wonderful conversations we had on the book, was his enthusiasm in meeting the orangutan, who people may know from the Clint Eastwood films, Any Which Way You Can.
Right. Any Which Way But Loose and all that.
Yeah, and really wonderful story in there. There was a TV show filming at the time on Paramount called Mr. Smith, and it was about an orangutan who was super intelligent, who went to Washington and becomes like I think he's a senator, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's a senator.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington Part 2. Yeah, yeah.
And the orangutan in the TV show is the orangutan is Clyde. I think the name is Clyde.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they brought the orangutan over to the set of Star Trek and had him sitting in the captain's chair. And, you know, that was sort of the joke. Anybody could be captain, that kind of thing. And they just had a wonderful time interacting with the orangutan. And then we really wanted to have a lot of the deleted scenes. If you read the DC Comics adaptation, you do get one panel that shows you this bar fight. And the bar fight was long rumored. And part of it, what we wanted to solve was the bar fight ever filmed? So we talked to people like Tom Morga, who is a stuntman,
legendary stunt guy.
We talked to, and Alan Miller, who played wonderful actor, who played the bar alien, who McCoy talks with.
He was such a pleasure to speak to.
Yeah, Alan Miller. Oh my gosh, look at that. Everyone's probably seen him in every television show you've ever watched, and he's in his 90s. A very, very intelligent, wonderful, creative person. Both him and his wife, just wonderful people. And we just love talking to him about everything from World War II experiences through to Star Trek. How he got the role and everything like that. And so we really wanted those scenes, the deleted scenes. And we were able to get those. So we were very, very happy about that. So there are pictures of the bar fight in there. It was filmed, but it was not finished. And because they didn't have the budget to go a second day, bringing everybody back in their alien makeup and restage the fight, they just brought back Conroy Gideon,
the agent,
DeForest, and Alan Miller, and they brought them back just for like a day to refilm the end where he tries to do the Vulcan neck pinch, because in the original thing, there's this big bar fight that ensues that DeForest Kelley starts, and then he tries to escape, and he's caught at the door by the Starfleet.
He starts the distraction, and then
exactly, and so. They had to kind of find a way to kind of edit that out. And so they had to do a little bit of refilming, and that was cheaper to do that than it was to do another day of filming on the bar fight. And really kind of unnecessary scene. I mean, it wouldn't have done much for the film.
Almost, okay. I'm going to admit something here. I had no clue about any of this, but I feel like I'm sitting here either with documents here or at the Roddenberry offices or somewhere that we could dive in and easily get to that.
Mm-hmm.
But then, aside from doing it, my first thought is maybe they did that as a nod to Dee in all of his westerns when he was the bad guy starting the bar fight, like some of those movies. But also the idea that they were on such a tight budget that they couldn't do a second. I mean, because I know they had aliens in that bar and it was lit and had the neon and had the people standing around playing, but it's not like it's a Cecil B. DeMille biblical epic. The idea that they were on such a tight budget that they couldn't do a second day and they lost the whole scene. They had to cut it down and revamp the ending of the scene. Anyway, that's Star Trek movies. It's like tight budget.
And I wonder too if some of that was Leonard too, making sure that he was staying on schedule. And I always thought that the bar fight scene, there is an acknowledgement in the script. Because Harv Bennett, his scripts are just a delight to read because he sneaks little jokes in, and he writes them as if he's a producer also, which he is, but he's not writing them solely as a writer. He's putting little notes in there. And one of the things he says is, the bar looks like something out of Star Wars, which is located across the street. He's kind of joking that the cantina is across the street. So maybe the fight too could have distinguished it a little bit. I mean, there is a bar fight in Star Wars too, but it's not a big brawl out bar fight. It's between Luke and Dr. Ezevan or whatever his name is, that guy, and Snagglepuss, I think, is whatever his Snaggletooth. They really were watching their pennies on the film.
Yeah, sure. And that's a good point too. It was Leonard making double safe sure. it's the kid borrowing the car, making sure he's got the gas filled and he's like not getting a scratch on it for the first time when he borrows it. Wow, there's just so many. I mean, I don't know. Do you think Star Trek 3 might be the best case for the most overlooked, underappreciated movie in all the Star Trek canon?
Yeah, well, I think that might be
the originals. Yeah.
Yeah, and my view on these. This is just a view I've long held. There's no bad pizza, right? There's just pizza, and some pizza you might like or prefer a little more than another pizza. But I've never met a piece of pizza I didn't like, and I never met an original Star Trek film that I didn't like. But
I appreciate you bringing the Will Rogers here, you guys. But
but I think each of these films that gets sort of maligned, a little bit maligned anyway, particularly 3 and 5. There are so many things now with the view of history back on them. So Star Trek 5, to me, there is no other Star Trek film that has the 3 of them in the film through the whole film. At almost there's a couple of moments, and they're actually story moments when Kirk is alone, because you have to have that concept of he could die because he knew he was going to die alone. But nearly that whole film, the 3 of them are together. You don't get that in 2. Nick has a tendency of separating the characters out. He does it in 2 and 4 and 6. There's this tendency of doing that. Usually it's in 2 and 6, it's Kirk and McCoy that are separated out, and Spock kind of stays on the ship and handles that portion of it. And in 4, it's obviously each of the teams has their assignments, and it's Kirk and Spock together. But so I think 5 is just beautiful in that way, because we don't have 2 of the 3 main stars with us anymore, and we don't have Michelle, and we don't have Jimmy, and
right.
There's so many that we have lost, 4 out of the 7. And 3, I think, pulls something quite amazing off. It should be it reminds me a little bit of Rogue One, in the sense that it should be depressing as hell. You have Kirk's kid, it gets killed. You lose the Enterprise. It's Kirk and company are mutineers, and it's very much a disarray. The ending, that our heroes are in disarray, but somehow it's not. It's got that ending. If I can want to talk about where the inspiration for that ending was, that was a surprise.
Oh yeah, so Harv Bennett writes the last scene first, and he's borrowing from, I want to say his name is William Gibson.
Yeah.
Yes. Miracle Worker. So the film is about Helen Keller and how Helen Keller gets it. And so he's writing it with the idea that Spock gets it. So at the end, when he says, "Your name is Jim," so he writes that first.
And that's just that moment when he raises the eyebrow, it makes everything okay. It's so I think it deserves a lot of credit for that, and really pulling off something that's quite astounding, which is, how do you believably bring back Spock in a way that you don't go, "Oh, please," because I never heard anybody say, "Oh, please." The original scripts, people might have said, "Oh, please." I mean, he was appearing as a ghost to people in some of the original versions of the script and things like that. He was never a child. There was never that growth being connected to the planet and him growing in spurts. He was a full adult in the first version of the script, but mindless and atavistic and primordial and violent. And so that's quite an accomplishment to pull that off in a way that's believable. And then the theft of the Enterprise is just one of the best scenes, I think, in all of Star Trek. Everybody contributes, and Uhura has the greatest scene in the world when she, and then when she says, "All my hopes," it's heartbreaking. And then,
but that scene wasn't in Bennett's script.
No.
Because in Bennett's script, Uhura stays with the crew. There is no Mr. Adventure, and there's a little added element to the escape. Or in the stealing of the Enterprise, is that they're in San Francisco. There's the Chinese New Year parade, and the crew hides under a traditional Chinese dragon as they're getting to the ship. Yeah, that's in Bennett's script. That's probably the one you were referring to.
Yeah, one of the early.
Yeah, it was a story draft. So
yeah.
Script.
And then,
I need to go back and read it. I just, in my mind, the most shocking thing is, oh, this is the Romulan. And well, let's talk about that too. So he starts off with Romulans, and is it Leonard that says, "Oh, Romulans are boring, do Klingons"?
Yeah, he thought the Klingons would be more cinematic and more dramatic.
Yeah, it's in the very first outline and the first script. Kruge he's named Kruge not in the outline, but in the first version of the script. Romulan Battlelord Kruge. And what's interesting for Star Wars fans, if you're familiar with Admiral Thrawn, who has this kind of neat character trait of knowing his enemy. He's an Imperial bad guy. He knows but he's very brilliant, smart tactician who one of the ways he defeats his enemy is by knowing the culture that they come from.
Their art.
So he studies their art, he studies their music, and 10 years before that, in this script, Kruge originally does that. Kruge is there with a character named Galt. You want to tell him who Galt is?
Oh, yeah.
Galt is a fascinating character.
It's a good example of how, especially with Harve Bennett, no good ideas go to waste. They get recycled and used in another way. So instead of Velcris handing the plans, the idea of Genesis to Kruge, it's a Vulcan spy named Galt, and Kruge doesn't trust him. Kruge says, okay, we'll go and investigate Genesis, but I want two things. If I'm successful, I want to be, like master of the fleet. And if Galt is lying, I'm going to kill him. And then, because he doesn't trust Galt. And Galt turns out to be Spock's brother. And so we'll use that, with the, in Star Trek 5 with Sybok, but that's who Galt is. And Galt will, at the end, because he finds out that Kruge has slaves on his ship, he's appalled at that. That kind of gives you this idea that Galt has a conscience. And so Galt will help Kirk and crew at the end of the film. And then it's revealed, it's like one of the last scenes, is that Galt is Spock's brother.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did they Vulcans?
Sorry?
So many Vulcans. Savage.
Did they
Saavik is still half Romulan in Bennett's early script. And then she's got more of a sense of humor. She refers to David as that dumb bastard, which you could read as humor. You might be able to read it as like she's got some feelings towards him. They were kind of playing on that. When you look at Nicholas Meyer's collection, you see photos, not just of like Saavik and David, but just the actors, Merrick Buttrick and Kirstie Alley, just off stage. The way they hung out, you could see there's, they're kind of toying with, there's a chemistry between those two characters.
Yeah.
So you kind of get that when you read Bennett's script.
In the very, very first version of the story, there is David and Carol are not in the story at all. Mm-hmm. And it's only Saavik. She stays on the ship. Saavik has a romance with Kirk in that version of the story, not with David. But and then Saavik is a very interesting. In fact, talking to Robin Curtis was as anybody who's ever talked to her knows, an absolute delight. She's just a wonderful, emotional, totally opposite to Saavik, but very smart actress. And it was really fascinating to learn. And by talking to her, learning why that Saavik is different in the way that it was presented, the character is presented in 3. And partially that's a function of story necessity. So Saavik becomes the expositional character. She knows about Vulcan heritage. She can explain things. And she does a lot more explaining than winds up in the film. They make a big deal about the difference between the Katra ritual and the Faltorpan ritual, that there's a difference in the rituals. And because normally the Katra is just depositing the soul into a sort of hall of souls.
Right.
Faltorpan's different because you're depositing the Katra back into the person, into their body. And so she was very much sort of there for expositional purposes. But really it was because Leonard, it's kind of hard how to say this, but the way Kirstie presented Saavik was the way that Nick Meyer wanted her presented. And it was the way that the script called for her to be presented, because she was half Romulan. And that is part of the script. It was filmed. It was just not, it was excised out of the story.
Right.
Partially because the average maybe moviegoer might not have known what a Romulan was.
Right.
And so when you get to 3, Saavik is the way that Leonard Nimoy wanted her to be, which is a full Vulcan. So even though Harv was, as Mary Jo mentioned, he's still perceiving her as this half Romulan character. She is half Romulan in all the expanded universe material. I think Leonard's position was, if it's there, we're not going to play with that. She is a Vulcan and will act like a Vulcan.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why you get a Saavik that has a little bit of there's a little bit of the Saavik from Star Trek II when they're on the ship with Esteban, a little bit of, there's a little dancing around, so human, that kind of thing, messing around.
Yeah.
But once she's on the planet, she's a different type of character and more Vulcan, more non-emotional. And that was, so I think both actresses gave exactly what their director wanted based on what the script called for.
Yeah. Did you all get into the like negotiations with Kirsty and her infamous agent at the time and all that?
Yeah, we talked about that in the book too. Part of it is that, I think they were, this is at least our feeling on it, that Kirsty's agent and that side of things were surprised by how large a role it was in 3. When you look at Saavik, I mean, 46 minutes of that movie takes place on the Genesis planet.
Mm-hmm.
And really, other than the fight with Captain Kirk at the end and sort of the moment with the ending with Kruge and that kind of thing, most of that's handled by Merritt Buttrick and Robin Curtis. So I think when they saw that Saavik had sort of in a way been elevated to a bigger role, they were looking in sort of traditional Hollywood terms at what the pay would be. And you can't do traditional Hollywood terms in a Star Trek movie
No.
that's budgeted at $16 million, when Empire Strikes Back was $20 million or more, more money than that 5 years before. So, yeah, it was unfortunate because I know Kirsty, we had spoken with Kirsty before she passed away, and she loved that role. She loved Saavik. She loved playing that character. And I'm certain would have come back had whatever stars aligned properly. All the numerous times there was chatter about her coming back. There, the sort of 3 times, for Star Trek 3, for Star Trek 6, and even on Next Gen with that cameo.
Right. Yeah. Right. Just to set things right. Well, I mean, she had been, notoriously, I mean, I know people from the Wichita area that said, oh, I remember her running around at cons with her ears on and mocking, she was she couldn't wear that in the Hollywood, much less the Hollywood of the 80s, but it was there. And it's why she felt, with everything that was changed about Wrath of Khan versus motion picture and, sets, uniforms, tone, lighting, creative people. And now here are these new characters and Kirk as a son and all these revolutionary changes that threw fans at the time even more. She was one thing that felt like she just fit right in. And aside from the puzzling moments that were still like tearing up and all of that were the leftovers from Romulans that anyway. Well, I've had you for almost an hour. We can do what else? What else do people know about?
This is a great little Kirstie Alley little fact about the game.
Okay.
Oh yeah, so she was on Match Game
before she was.
Yeah, she was still the interior designer.
I think that's on YouTube. Yeah,
it is. It is on YouTube, and it's fun because you can watch. Chris Pine's father, Robert Pine, is the person who helps her win the money. So you have, the
future Saavik.
Future Saavik.
With the Kelvin universe's Kirk's dad. Yeah. It gets confusing.
But he, Kelvin Kirk's dad was did a guest star on an Enterprise, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
He did his own guest turn in Trek, so he has his own Trek cred for a moment. Well, anyway. I don't want to keep you guys too long. What else? Is there anything else we should know about either the book or the making or surprise? Don't want to give it all away.
No, we're just
Oh,
going
you've got a lot of storyboard, and there's a lot of pre-production. I mean,
lots of art. Yeah, lots of art in this book.
I don't know if we saw it
And just some
Yeah.
teasers. There's a practical joke played on Leonard that would have given me a heart attack. Someone loses their script after being told, be careful with your script. And
because what they're numbering the scripts now, right? And putting the big.
well,
they're doing the script security now. On this,
there was a speech about being careful.
Yeah,
with your
someone gave a speech about being careful with the script, and that person lost their script. And but you'll see who it was, which is hilarious. But there were a couple comments.
Yes.
I don't know if you wanted us to.
Oh yeah. Let's do that. Did you see? Let me start up top. There's one you see. Let me see here.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
So Star Wars book, but it's not a graphic novel.
Hey, Jerry, good to see you again here finally. Let's see.
Well, Rose asked about a Star Wars book. Actually, Rose, we do have one out already. It's called The Star Wars Radio Dramas, Brian Daley and the Serialization That Saved the NPR. It's all about the Star Wars radio dramas. It's a really, we think, a beautiful tribute to Brian. It's sort of half biography, half biography of Brian, and half biography of the radio dramas. So we do a lot about the making of the radio dramas. We were able to interview Anthony Daniels and Perry King and John Madden, who directed them, who also went on to direct Shakespeare in Love, won an Academy Award for that. He directed all 3 of the Star Wars radio dramas. And really an important piece of NPR history, Frank Mankiewicz, and there's a lot of connections, which is kind of neat, to War of the Worlds in the story. It's very interesting. But Frank Mankiewicz, who was the president of NPR at the time, said that the Star Wars radio dramas saved NPR. So it's a really fascinating story. And so if you like Star Wars and you like radio dramas, they have a new Con radio drama out now. You might check out that book.
And I like how
kind of a spine of your tagline of your book, though, right? The radio show that saved NPR, or the Star Wars that saved NPR. Yeah.
I like Mona's summary here about Saavik because, they were going to have her be Spock's daughter with between Spock and the Romulan commander.
Yeah, that was one of the original ideas. Was that Saavik was the Romulan commander had taken Spock's DNA and created a daughter. And then Spock kind of adopted, that daughter after rescuing her, that kind of thing. And a lot of interesting, a lot of what ifs, even with 2 and 3.
Right. And then Saavik having young Spock going through his Ponfar, having Spock being pregnant with Spock, which came that close to being.
And it was filmed. Yeah, it was filmed. We were able to confirm it was filmed. We have a couple photos of that. Just as part of our normal research, we try to expand beyond that a little bit, beyond 3, and look at some things about the next film. And but edited, of course, out, except for very mild hints.
Until we got the Toyo, almost like a fanzine on video, or even more so, like the highest end fan film ever. Yeah, where they've gone back to the folks that have postulated their son there with. Let me see what else. Anything else? You're ahead of me. Randy, define cute. What do you mean she was too cute to play a Vulcan? That's very speciest of you, Randy.
One of the reasons they kept her eyebrows, her original eyebrows, and did not do Werner Kepler, who's the makeup artist in 2, did not do the shave off half and extend up, was because she could raise her eyebrow on her own to make it almost look like she had those kinds. So they felt, let's not mess with her looks, because she was obviously she was attractive. And but it was also, they thought she could do it because she had been a fan. She could do it on her own without that.
And she still had her ears, obviously, but
baked in Werner Kepler's oven. That's how they made it. He had to bring them home and tune them in his oven. And his wife was like, "When am I going to have my kitchen back?" But
she was happy when the film was over.
Yeah. So Dan says, I don't think The Search for Spock was as maligned as the motion picture. No. It's just that silly odd even meme. It's like 3 got lumped in with, and like you said, 5 people have had a kinder view to 5 over the years. Well, I feel like with the motion picture finally being finished the way it was supposed to be done all along, and color timed, much less full audio, much less completed effects. Do you think, let's just do a sidebar here, John, MaryJo. I've said after seeing it got better and better and better, but now after the last 4K redo of the motion picture, doesn't it feel like almost everything we critiqued or laughed or poked fun about the motion picture has been fixed?
Oh, absolutely. If you have the ability to see that in 4K, it is like, I felt very similar when we saw and if anybody's ever seen the Richard Donner version of Superman 2, when they released that on DVD and Blu-ray before Richard Donner passed away. And it was sort of his version of the movie and how he would have done 2, because he did film a lot of 2 originally, and then they brought in another director. And you're watching it, and you're watching the whole scenes with Christopher Reeve that you've never seen before. And of course, beautiful and sad at the same time watching that. And that's very much how we felt when we watched Star Trek, the motion picture on 4K, because it's sort of like, this had to be what was in Robert Wise's mind. This is what he saw in his eye. This is what Gene Roddenberry saw in his eyes and in his imagination. And it's so beautiful, that film. I mean, you can see V'ger now.
Yeah.
The costumes look much better.
Oh, the costumes.
Well, there's color. I mean, we talk about it being slow, but my other feeling is it was dead and gray and just, ugly. And now it's like, oh, look, there's a palette. There are blues and there are reds in with the gray and the silver and the V'ger bowl, the V'ger temple scene at the end feels like it's finally, I don't know. I feel like I'd never seen it before until I saw the 4K version. But it's just I'm sorry, this picture has color in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where before the first was just one big gray whale,
Yeah, it was so, it's one of those realities, right, of filming, where it can look one way on the set and then look another way. And really, Star Trek, the motion picture, is such an accomplishment, in the sense of there were so many forces at work against them. It's Star Trek, which had its own amazing following, had to become mainstream. It was on Sanford and Son. It was on Welcome Back, Kotter. It was on Saturday Night Live. It had become this mainstream thing. And now you're going to go back and you're going to do a film 10 years later, but you also have the Star Wars thing hanging over you. Right. And really, it was quite an accomplishment at that time, even, I think. But
the Star Wars thing hanging over it in the public's mind, you had the corporate pride and Paramount staking there. And and that whole rush to December 7th, they'd stake their corporate cred on, but they'd also stake their bankroll on, because if they had missed that and paid out the fine, it would have just about sunk the studio.
Yeah.
So, and that's what killed the movie. If they hadn't been on such a dead run to make that crazy deadline.
And also it was a film where they were coming at it. They hadn't done that before, right? So one of the things you see in the making of the Star Trek films, all of them, is the growing confidence that everybody has. And it's one of the reasons the film gets better, because they've been able to make the mistakes and now know how to avoid the mistakes.
Yeah. But I was a little thrown. I was listening to Nick Meyer talk at some point, something I don't even, anyway, he was talking about how when he did the Wrath of Khan, they walked in, and part of the dash, the mad, and you guys did the book, this, but the mad dash of assembling the 5 drafts was such a cutthroat moment. It was a sink or swim moment, because they'd almost done the exact same thing. They had pre-committed a sale date to open the movie and committed the theaters for the space. And it's like, you would have thought that they wouldn't have backed into that again. But part of the reason he did what he did insanely was because they were going to lose their window and pay out a ton of money. And anyway, it just felt like, really, guys, you've done this again after the last one. And
yeah, 12. It was 12. He did in 12 days what they couldn't do in almost a year and a half, which was get a workable script. And they needed that because ILM needed it. Even as much as they needed to start filming, ILM needs that to break down the how much is this going to cost? How much is that going to cost? And can we do it? That kind of thing. And they didn't have anything workable to give them.
Yeah, especially in the analog days. Well, I should let you go. I just want to repeat that Star Trek II, the Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, making of the classic film. It's been out since September 2nd, so I hope everybody's happy with it. I mean, it's got huge stars on Amazon, I'm looking, and I think everybody else is similar that way. Again, tons of great photos, tons of rare ones, tons that are a lot of behind the scenes, which is my thing. And yet lots of, as you said, original interviewing and actual reading and text in here and stories. You've got all the different departments are represented here. Oh, look, see, you talked to Phil Wayland. I love Phil.
Yeah, we tried in this one too to focus on, stand-ins, stunt performers. On 2, we focused a lot on the camera crew and makeup. In this book, we talk a lot about the music. I mean, there's so many different people that contribute. It's impossible to feature everyone in there, but we were able to just, when we could, we put a picture in of someone. Someone mentioned, I think Dan in the chat mentioned Tom Lay. We were able to get a picture of Tom Lay in the book.
Oh, good. Okay.
So that kind of thing. So we were very happy that we were able to do that.
So Michael Poti here, let's not stir anything up. Is there a making of Star Trek IV book coming, or is that all to be decided? Or
it's to be decided, but we're very, very hopeful. We think there shouldn't be a reason why there wouldn't be.
Yeah.
So keep your eyes open in the next few months. Hopefully there'll be news about that.
Okay. Dan says, I need to go back and wade through my Star Trek 3s. I haven't done that as much as my Star Trek 2s. An early draft story referred to the Organians? What, because of the treaty zone and supposedly, or?
Yeah, there was a little chatter about the Organians also in 2. I think it's one of those things where obviously Harv, as much as 2, 4, he was inspired by a couple of things. He was inspired by a fan poem, and he was also inspired by City on the Edge of Forever, Harv.
Mm-hmm.
On 3, as MaryJo mentioned, he was inspired in part by the Miracle Worker.
Plus, I just want to say, because I agree with Philip's comment about the trilogy, and I think someone else said it too.
You're talking about this one here? I was just reading it.
Torgo, yes. Yeah. That 3 was such a natural film to make. Sometimes you'll hear people say like, oh, who is this for? Who asked for this? And it's like the story asked for this. The story demanded that this, that 2 demanded that 3 be made. So, I think it's a very natural trilogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Harv too was, he was influenced by those episodes. So I think he was influenced by the Organian appearance and things like that. So, but right. 3 fits the classic mold of a middle chapter. It's a tragic chapter for the heroes. It's sort of like Empire Strikes Back, right? It does not end entirely on a happy note. It ends with a victory, but a victory that cost a lot, has the all the markings of the middle chapter of a trilogy, and I always liked when MaryJo reminds me of that, that it was a necessary film. It was she said, you couldn't do. There would have been no Star Trek if not for 3. I mean, how you have to bring back Spock.
It does end on a. To me, it's a happy note when you see, and the adventure continues. Mm-hmm. I find that so heartwarming. Like, oh, we're going to see our friends again.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say thank you, Torgo 1001. Maybe new. You're not new to the channel, are you? If you are, thanks for jumping in, and maybe I've seen you here before, but if not, either way, it's good to have you jumping in. Here you go, guys. Like you needed to be told, but Dan is happy to say the Wrath of Khan book is fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. It's funny. We are actually more proud, if you can believe that, of the 3, partially because not as much of the story of 3 has been told, the making of it.
Yes.
So I think fans will enjoy learning about the Spock puppet and the filming and how the Klingons were cast. And
you had Kirk Thatcher interviewed, and he's one that's been out there and worked and just feels like the last 3 or 4 years kind of made himself. I mean, like we snared him. I got him for Portal 47. We've had him on the Trek Files, and just those little, all these people. And I totally agree. And it's what it's what I've tried to do since I had the keys to do anything with Star Trek, was all these people, not only that they deserve to have their contribution in large and small ways, especially small, because the small ways add up, but also just to get them recorded before they're passed, because that whole pastiche gives us so much more about the way the movies were, and just, you never know where the tiniest little insight is going to pop out of some stand-in or some stunt guy or some makeup artist is going to say something. You're like, oh my gosh, now that makes sense, or that's why that was that way. And it's no actor and no director or writer is going to be in a position to maybe tell you something like that, because everybody has something to contribute that way.
We love the tiny details. Vaj remembered what it smelled like on set. And so many people talked about how Leonard Nimoy was as a director, and how for some of them, when they auditioned, it wasn't reading a script. It was just having a conversation with Leonard.
And how important his wife was. We have a little tribute to Sandy Zober Nimoy in the book, because she hosted a lot of the Klingons at their house. She hosted a lot of the interviews were done at Leonard's home. And she was the host, and we had asked in each of the books, we've tried to get people who are related to those that we've lost to give us memories of it. And on 2, we had Anita Montalban and Julie Nimoy. On 3, we have Keegan Allen, who is in his own right a very popular actor. He's the new Walker. He was on Pretty Little Liars. His father was Philip Allen, who played Captain Esteban, and he gave us just a beautiful tribute. He is just a remarkable young man and a great, I think, actor himself. But and then we talked to Adam in this book, because Adam, of course, went on to have his own directorial career, and that connection with his father as a director. So he was telling us about his mother, and him remembering him when he was a little boy, her reading the scripts for Star Trek with him in their bedroom. It's for him to practice the lines, and that she was really somebody who, contributed to Star Trek in a way, like you were saying, where you wouldn't think to interview someone, And so family members, I think, a lot of times see things. Anita Montalban told us that her father got up at 3 o'clock in the morning every morning to work out for 3 hours for the role of Khan. Wow. For Wrath of Khan, so he could have the upper body strength to present this proper image of a super type of character. So, there's every person, from the person who turns on the lights, and well, you've been doing that for 40 years. Not to age you, Larry, but you're old. And you've been doing, right? I mean,
I wish it was 40 years, but I mean, it's my interest. But yeah,
it's a long time. But well, that was one of the great things with the Communicator that you did, where you gave fans a chance to write in and ask questions, and you would talk to Rick Berman or to whoever was running Star Trek at that time. And so
give shout out to Dan Madsen there.
And Dan, of course,
Dan set that up. We did. I put my stamp on it, but all those basics were Dan. Yeah.
Yeah, and Dan, and that the Communicator and the fan club was that lifeline for fans at that time. And a lot of what made that, I think, special, made Dan and yours and all the people that worked on it, was looking at those little corners, shining the flashlight in the corner into areas that normally don't get, because everybody always interviews the stars or the director or the producer. But when you get to interview the people who did the lighting or the stand-ins or things like that, a stand-in is on set. Phil Whalen was on set probably more than anyone else, because he's there for everybody. He's dialogue coach, he's stand-in, he's just,
and he has the memory. He's got this memory that we just won't quit. Yeah. But I wish he'd do a book, but he says he's not going to. But anyway, you just have to grab him in a place where you can wind him up and get him started talking, and then hopefully have a recorder of some kind going.
Just great. But yeah, I think, there's so many people that preceded us. Dan, you, Alan Asherman, who did and Cinefex. I mean, there were so many people that did this these sort of chartings of it. And what we're fortunate is we get to look at these films with it's not in the moment, right? So, and I think that's the best way to look at history. You want to capture in the moment what is going on and what people's thoughts are. Then you get their thoughts 40 years later. Mm-hmm. What do you remember about that? What do you feel about that? Because then you see the effects of that, whatever it is you're studying. So if people like this book, I do really encourage you, go back and look at old Star Logs, look at old communicator magazines, read Larry's previous books.
Somebody scanned, somebody got Starlog, but it's gone away. Someone had Starlog all scanned and available online, and it's gone. I don't even see where it's got a paywall to it now. But one thing I want to do is, and I talked to Dan about it once, somebody needs to find a pot of money, but we need to get the official fan club magazine / communicator scanned and put up. We got to do 150th issue, and we went back to his early newsletter editions, and there were interviews with Whoopi and with Kurt, at the time when nobody was talking about Star Trek, like in the mid-aughts. The people who had been part of Star Trek and then got onto a huge career and weren't really talking about it. And we had interview bits from the early issues that we reproduced in the 150th. But just to have the thing, just to have it scanned and out there for people now, and in the way that we communicate, which is digitally archived and if not audio visual. I'd love to have had that project happen, and maybe when Dan and I are still around to see it. But I feel like if they got the Starlog issues done and they're out there somewhere, we could get our 155 issues of communicate. And you know what? I meant to introduce. I didn't do you guys a very adequate introduction, but I did want to say the first time we met was you guys were in the fan spotlight in one issue.
Yes, that's right. Right around the time of Nemesis. Mm-hmm. So thrilled to I still remember.
LA claim. We started that fan spotlight to feel more interactive. Where it wasn't just a one-way street with people.
Oh, it was. I always say Dan's magazine was the internet before the internet. Mm-hmm. It really was. All those fanzines. Well, I remember seeing Larry's name the first time I ever saw Larry's name. Was it an Interstat? I mean, you want to
probably. Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Interstat. And it was
I felt like such a minority because Interstat was 90% Spock fanfic women, and then the 5% of us that were like background fans, and would talk about something besides Spock and Vulcans. But that
was and that was a great era. I mean, that era of fandom where it seems in some ways it was what we were more together, even though it's easier to be together now as fans. It's a lot easier to do things like this or whatever. But it seemed like oddly, I think more of a community, even though it was an analog world back then. It was maybe because there wasn't as much Trek, and so everybody was focused on one or two things, maybe, as opposed to a variety. Not that a variety is bad, but once you start expanding the franchise out and there's new Trek and all this sort of thing, you're going to wind up with enclaves and subcultures within the subculture and
and I don't want to sound like old man on the yard, not yelling at the kids, but old man in the yard saying, what's that old meme about? You had to be tough fans back in. You didn't have the whole world in your phone, in your pocket. You had to know stuff, and you had to at least know what you didn't know, and where to go look it up, and who to go ask. And that was part of that culture too. Was you had your whole hierarchy, and we also had the Well Committee in the day, which I say was the internet of stamps and paper. Because that was all the things that Star Trek made people so passionate to want to know what was made and what was out by, what was past and what was present and what could be future. And that's exactly why people go to the internet now, and the billions of things people might search for or go look after. Well, that didn't exist then. And nothing until Star Trek really made that many people want to know that much variety, about a thing. And so this stamps and paper, internet rose up to answer questions about what had been made, what was available now, how to do things on your own. And it's just, and then, and then when the internet had been, by the early 90s, the Well Committee disbanded, but you had volunteers answering people's questions. Yeah, it's just
Shirley running it.
Shirley Mayuski running it after Helen Young and Bijo had a hand in it in the beginning. But it's like you see it's like, how did the passion for Star Trek was always there. It's just the world wasn't ready. It's like people talk about now, like now with digital effects, we can have the ships do things that they never could before because we had analog models on shooting stands, and you couldn't have a ship do a barrel roll. I mean, that's a simplistic comparison, but even as the years have gone by, we can now do things in different ways that we couldn't then. And one of them is just reach people. But that doesn't take away from the specialness of that, like you were saying, the community and the time. And then when you did get to meet somebody live, like at a convention, it was a big thing to get to your regional con and then maybe get to finally get to a New York or an LA convention and meet some of those, meet B. Joe Trimble and meet Dorothy Fontana and meet David Gerald, much less the actors. Okay, I'm on a ramble here. You got
there's a couple of great
started.
I've seen. The making of the Star Trek conventions, which is a book that was made in the 1970s.
Yep. Joni Winston.
Joni Winston. Yeah, that's a great book for anybody who wants to maybe who wasn't there or wants to remember what it was like when they were there, to go back and pick that up. Maybe you could find it on a used bookstore or something like that. It's a really great look at those early convention days, and what that was like. I do think that's a book that needs to be written now today, because I think the younger fans would appreciate it. I think they would have an interest in it. But that's also a history that's disappearing. We lost John Trimble, for example, and that those early pioneers of the fan community. Just someone sit down and interview. Someone sit down and interview you. Sit down and interview Dan. Sit down and interview. We lost Alan Asherman. There's the people who were chronicling. Sit down and interview Ian Spelling. The people that helped to bring to fans the information in that analog era and what it was like back then. I think because that is so important to why it is the reason Star Trek became what it is. That's not unusual. The audience is the reason anything is popular, whether it's a musician or it's always the fan. But there's something unique about that commitment and the passion that the Star Trek fans had that never went away. It was never a fad. It wasn't it wasn't a trend. It wasn't, just
even well, I don't know. There's a long-term Beatles or Rolling Stone fandom, but like you think about the Elvis or the Frank Sinatra or the Rudolph Valentino. Everything sparks and gets hot and then wanes, and there's still a hardcore maybe with it, but everything that's, eternally hot in the moment. Star Trek has stayed there and peaked and valleyed, but still been around, and it's outlasted all those rock band and movie star, fan clubs and things. I'm gonna throw one more here from Rose. We mentioned it really briefly since you all did the there. Have you heard the audio program for Con so far?
We have not, because we decided we wanted to hear it all at one time. And partially because we're going to die probably in between chapters, wanting to know what happens, in the next chapter. But also a little bit of I don't want to say fear, I guess. It's such a special character, and there's a lot of hands in that. I'll just say, I think there's more hands in that radio drama than people may realize, and so. We want to hear the whole thing at one time so we can feel it as a story. Right. Because I think that's one of the things, I remember listening to the Star Wars radio dramas, and it was intolerable waiting a week for the next chapter. Everybody knows what it was like to wait 3 months between, those dreaded words to be continued, or, or waiting for Fonzie. Was Fonzie going to make it over the barrels, for those who remember that kind of thing, or the Borg and all that. So, but I also think that the audio dramas like that often benefit from, I don't like reading comics anymore either in unless it's together. In other words, I forget between issues what made that first issue special. And so it just feels better to read the 12 issue story arc together in one thing. In fact,
that's the way we do with the streaming series of 6 or 8 or 10. And well, I watch Star Trek week to week to week, but Janet watches. She waited till Strange New was all the way out with 10. But so, a lot of the British shows we watch, we have a rule: we wait till all 8 or 10 are out before we sit down to go. Nobody wants to be held. You waited this long for it. You can wait a few more weeks.
We're hopeful because that has a lot to live up to. That obviously Ricardo Montalban, but we're big fans of Greg Koch's work, the 3 books that he did, which just crazy imaginative, funky, books that have the Bionic Woman in it. I mean, it's just that they're what is she doing in this book? But just a really inventive way.
Are you talking about the underground eugenics wars, or are you talking about
and so it's the rise and fall of Khan, those books, so that they're really genius in the way that they are, like he didn't need to retro Khan. He doesn't need to set Khan further in the future. It did happen in the 90s. We just didn't know it. And it was just a brilliant book and a brilliant set of books. So it'll be interesting to see if any of that fits into it or not. But we're very happy that they're doing audio dramas. And in a way, oh, no, really, no. Yeah.
Sorry, I know I had to poke it.
But I'm happy because Star Trek can really. I think audio dramas are one of the best ways to enjoy science fiction. I prefer the Star Wars audio dramas to the movie because of that. Nick Meyer had something interesting. We were talking to him about that because he obviously knows a lot about War of the Worlds, having written the movie about it. He had told us, movies and television are the only art form really where all your senses can be manipulated. In other words, you got the sound, you have the visuals, it's all that. But when you look at a painting, it's not moving. When you hear a song, you're not seeing anything. So with radio dramas or audio dramas, you create that story within your mind. It becomes a much more personal adventure, and you become the director of it. And I think it stays with you longer and more emotionally than other things. Now, certainly helped that I saw Star Wars and knew what a Wookiee looked like to have the audio dramas. So I think Star Trek can really benefit from that because they can do the same thing. Plus, I do think it's genius. I don't know that you want to bring Khan back. I don't know that another actor can do Khan like Ricardo Montalban.
Right.
But if you just use a good actor's voice, like the actor that they have now is a very talented actor playing Khan in the radio dramas, then I can still see Ricardo Montalban in my mind.
Yeah.
When I hear it. So
I think after what, 40 coming up on 45 years, like that's the impact that he had on that role.
And I thought that was a brilliant way if you're going to bring him back.
Yeah.
Because no matter what you do, no matter how good an actor you are, that is one role I don't know that you can recast and have people go, okay, I accept him. Like I liked the kid who played the young Han Solo. I thought he did a really good job. I accepted him in that role. You can sometimes accept an actor in another role that's played by in an iconic way. James Bond, we're so used to that, or Batman. But something about Khan, I don't know.
Well, listen, this has been a great discussion. I should really let you guys go.
Thank you.
Once again, congratulations on another winner for collecting and wrangling all this and having the patience. And, yay to Titan for keeping the book line. They've sadly let the magazine go for whatever finances, logistics, modern day media, but keeping their hand in the Star Trek book publishing has been great. And Nothing against our friends over the years at Pocket, but I'm just glad to see Titan doing things with the nonfiction side that were not being done for a long time. And I know Hero Collector was doing the same thing with their line until they went down. But I'm glad someone is doing something that gives these books the due that they're due. And I'm glad you guys are involved with it.
Thank you, Larry.
It is
Thank
awesome.
you for the great questions in the chat too.
Yeah, thanks very much. We appreciate seeing everyone.
Yeah. Well, listen, I will let you go. Once again, it's the making of Star Trek 3, guys. Do you have a preferred way for people to get it, or are you?
No, Amazon's great. Or if you have an affiliate link for yourself, that'd be great.
Okay.
Just get it, because like anything else in the world, if we want to see a 4, 5, and a 6, it's going to depend on sales. So, it's already started to tick down a little bit in price. They always come out at full price or whatever, and then the companies have battles over the price. The retailers. So it's starting to go
a gas war only for Star Trek books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's starting to go down a little bit, and if anybody's listening, we're happy to answer any questions. You can tag us on Facebook. We're on Facebook under my name, but it's our account, and always happy to meet fellow fans.
Yeah, very good. Okay, guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Can't wait till we can cross paths and see each other in the flesh again. But till then, you guys take care.
Thanks, Larry. We appreciate everything.
Okay, enjoy that Iowa countryside. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, everybody. Thanks so much for the Tenutos to being with us today. I think we've been in and out of the chat here, so I think let's call it there, right? Hope everybody is having a good day and a good week. And again, thanks for you all for being here, for being with us around the world. If you were new to Tuesday today, thanks for speaking up. May have had a few. Yes. Michael, I'll run your there. A little late in one. Some thank yous. Yep. For John and MaryJo. Yeah. I'm kind of the same way, though. I listened to the first one and I didn't get to the second episode of Con, and I may do the same thing now. I may wait for the other 8 to come out and before I do another second opinion after the first one. Good to see everybody. Yay. It was fascinating. And I'm glad that we didn't dive so much into all the highlights of the book that there's not plenty of spoilers and teasers and teasers still for the book that makes it worth having. You need it on your shelf. There's some awesome color work. There's artwork, pre-production, some behind the scenes pictures I hadn't seen that I don't think so. And it's like everything else. Star Trek 3 gets sandwiched in between. There's only the one location that was at night, the stairs over at Occidental College, as far as locations go. So they were right. It was a stage show, and it's amazing doing so much of a fake. The Genesis planet was on stage, but it gave a little bit of a feeling it was out of rooms. But it's all what they did with that, and then the ILM matte paintings that gave it some scope that they can do on a movie budget by then in the 80s, even on a cheap movie budget. And the Star Trek movies were relatively inexpensive. They weren't huge blockbusters because Paramount was not going to go to the budget. They went there with the motion picture and didn't get the return, or they kind of limped over the finish line that way. So they were riding the rims. They weren't going to risk that much money again, now that they kind of had the Star Trek audience pegged and tagged. So anyway, thanks everybody for being with us today. Thanks so much. And of course, what I got to do is thank all of our TTLers. So yeah, thanks Chuck A., James Kerwin, Diana Hopkins, Albert Gunjansson, Lawrence Todd, Chris Jiggins, Mitch Keith Rombach, Josh Patton, Pranakasha Productions, and Comedy Forecast. And then our live wires, that's J.R. Poole, Gary Williams, Robert McLean, Byron Bailey, Donna S. Runyon, Brandon Coles, Dave Gregory, Jesse at Crusher Convo, Chris Garris, and Casey Shafsky. You can be on that list yourself. I really appreciate them doing it. I think it's a fairly humble one, $5, $10 on Patreon, patreon.com/Trekland Live. I really appreciate it. It's the shout out and then access at the $10 level, access to to some of our older original years in the portal, our guest interviews. So 2 things. Number 1, speaking of the portal, its 10th anniversary. I want everybody to be listening. We're trying to nail down the guest and the time. I have a couple of options. Next month, sometime in October, is our target date for open house every year. This is finishing up the 10th year for Portal 47. Almost always a guest every month, plus our roundtables of fans and me, things out of my archives. I'm always reanalyzing, but I need to see if Portal is still relevant and serving a need. And I think it is. I feel like the rest of the world has caught up with what I was trying to do in 2015 in a lot of ways, but there's still a lot of voices, a lot of creatives out there, a lot of ways of the biz, both in the 80s, 60s, 80s, and 90s, and today, as well as just these people and knowing what they do, how the industry works, and their special stories, and their special stories about Star Trek, and their special personal photos from Star Trek. It's all still worth it. Anyway, give us a shot. If you're curious, check out portal47.com, portal47.net, I should say. Yeah, there's that. Again, it's the time of year when it's great to take a Trekland trek, a day tour. 4 places, 4 actual Star Trek filming sites that I'll help you set up ahead of time. I've got all the information on not just locations, but the dates and filming and all of that, even for the Picard series, which brought filming back to LA when everything moved to Toronto with the current regime. So, yay for that. Let me know if you're interested in a Trekland trek. I've got more and more people. I've got some coming up. I have one in a couple of weeks. We'll be posting pictures from that when we're there. So yeah. And again, talking about Patreon, I want to thank everybody for supporting the Trek Files too. New episode is up. Yay. Back with Glenn Swanson this week, talking about the NASA and Smithsonian and early Star Trek mutually benefiting love affair. We've got some amazing rare photos and memos and insights from Glenn's book we're sharing on the Trek Files again this week. You want to check that out. The new one is out just today. You can get them at podcastroddenberry.com or our actual new home. Yes, Facebook is there. All the podcast places are there, but the easiest place to get the document of the week and the audio player and the hot links back into Memory Alpha is thetrekfiles.com, a page at Memory Alpha, along with our entire database. What you also need to know is now that there is a community just for the Trek Files. We have our Trekophiles tonight at our Trekophiles Discord, which is part of the Roddenberry Discord. And you can get the whole thing for $1 a month. Join the mission log, our friends Mission Log at Roddenberry. It's $1 a month. You get access to all of their shows and their communities, led by the Trek Files and Trekophiles tonight. Every other Monday at 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern, I have a live hour and a half with our Trekophiles. We talk about the show, maybe other Trek topics too. And that's my dedicated Trek Files community. That will be next Monday. Coming up, 4 Pacific. So if you're a Trekophile and you would like to meet other Trekophile fans, we don't have much of a meetup place. Well, we do now over the years. There at the Discord for Patreon for Mission Log. It's the Discord through the Roddenberry Mission Log Patreon, and then the full board is amazing. Gang, that's going to do it, I think. I think that. If you're looking for me on the socials, it's Larry Nemechek on Twitter and on Blue Sky. It's Larry's Trekland. Please like and subscribe here if you have not. Same thing on Facebook, same thing on Instagram. It's going to get a little busy here with, New York Comic Con's coming up, but also our open house, 10th anniversary open house. I invite everyone. It's the one time a year we open the doors. It's a big free event. It's a sample of Ask Dr. Trek Roundtable. It's a sample of the guest night, and we do it with a really high profile guest that I'm getting really anxious to be able to announce coming up pretty soon. So take it easy. And yeah, portal47.net. It's your backstage pass for more in-depth Trek. For all of those who have no idea how much Star Trek they still have no idea about. Even after you have read one of John and Mary Jo's movie original series books. So catch Star Trek 3 as you can, and catch John and Mary Jo when you can at a convention where you're in the region there. That's going to do it for us today, gang. Thanks so much. Yeah. Oh, no. Hoodie. No, I didn't forget you. There you are right there. Ish. Well, I enjoy you enjoying it, Ma, Sherry. Everybody take care out there. Oh, I'll say this real fast. Yeah, I saw what Brandon meant. It's like, who doesn't believe that? Anybody that worked with historical Star Trek, nobody wants to kill themselves with 26, but I think 18 or 20 a year is not a killer. I think you could even reduce the per episode budget a little bit, and it wouldn't kill everybody. Well, okay, I'll say real fast, Christoph, there is this, but if there's a surge at the end, then there's a surge at the end. So yeah, it's been produced. After all this time, it's sitting there in the can. It's sitting there. Everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. That's going to do it. We'll see you back here next Tuesday with something going on. And until then, please, 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 everybody, stay healthy, do all the things, stay awoke, check the sources. Getting pretty thick out there. It finds increasingly ways to stay thick. So look out for yourselves. Look out for your sanity. Look out for your country, wherever you may be. And we will see you next week at the very latest. Oh, I'm at LA Comic-Con for anyone there this weekend. We have a panel at we have a Trek Files panel at 11 at LA Comic-Con downtown LA. If you're there, come out and see us. There's a mission log panel on Saturday. I might be visiting, so I might see some folks later on Saturday as well at LA Comic-Con this weekend. All righty. Trek well, everybody.